Hello, welcome back to the podcast Journey to Well. So today we have a repeat guest, Dr. Diane. Oh my gosh, I didn't even ask you how to say your last name, Mueller.
Mueller, yep.
Oh God, I got it right. So she came on the podcast probably a couple months ago. She's a board certified sexologist with dual doctorates in naturopathic medicine and acupuncture and oriental medicine. And really, we had a wonderful conversation just about sex and opening up those conversations and myths that we have about orgasms and being together with our partner. And at the end of that episode, which I will link below, we had a really fun intro to sex toys. And then I was like, we need to have a whole nother conversation about sex toys because I think that's one of the things that we don't really talk about. And there's a lot of myths around sex toys in general. And then we're going to talk about even some ideas of where to get sex toys, where to get ideas for different sex toys to try. So yeah, I'm so excited to have you back on, Dr. Diane. Thank you so much for your time. And why don't you give a brief introduction? Hopefully everyone's already listened to the first podcast by you, but if they have not, who are you and what brought you to a sex coach position?
Yeah, thank you. If you asked me 2 decades ago what I would be doing with my time, I would have never thought I would be talking
Love
about
it.
sex so publicly. But
Yes.
here we are, and it's been, truly, Hannah, it's been truly a amazing journey. Like my biggest interest with talking about sex and intimacy live is in helping couples that are really in love, that they want their relationship to work, but they are finding themselves like failing in the regards of sex, either because of desire mismatch and one partner
Mm,
wants it more than another, or a lack of orgasm, or whatever it is. And this part of their relationship is just not working. And we see it's one of the top reasons for divorce. So a lot of I feel like I've like been a rebel my whole life. And so it's like,
yeah.
while it's surprising in some ways that I'm talking about this stuff live, in other ways it's not, because I do have a
Mm,
tendency to just navigate towards those things that I feel like are not being talked about, and are
yeah.
not being talked about in a, in a professional type of way. And, not saying it's like there's plenty of people that do things their own way, and that's fine. But I really feel like a lot of people and couples that are looking for just like professional advice around sex and around intimacy don't have a place to go that's like where it's like not porn, but we're still
Mm-hmm.
talking about all the sexy stuff. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So that's really been my work over the past years, is to really help to fill that gap. And frankly, it's also been amazing for my own relationship, because I am very much in anything I do, as I know you are, around like practice what I preach, and being in like so committed professionally to this concept of how do we keep hotness, how do we keep passion, how do we keep novelty and aliveness in our long-term partnerships, really helps just with like extra layers of motivation for me to continue to explore that within the context of my own relationship. So it's been a really cool journey, both for like me professionally as well as for me with my partner.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. Practicing what you preach and having that. I mean, I do that a lot in my business. I use human design all the time. I do somatic breathwork quite often. And actually, speaking of the last episode that you were on, you mentioned a specific sex toy, the Lexus, and I got it. So we have to talk about
Yay!
that
Hooray!
later.
I have it right
We'll
here for
get
show and
there.
tell.
Yeah. I actually have mine too because I'm like, I meant to email you, but so I definitely do want to get into some specific suggestions. But one of the things that you mentioned that I really love about you, and especially regarding this topic of sex, is there aren't a lot of options. Yeah, what you're saying, there's not a lot of conversation around these topics that is not just like, yeah, let's go watch some porn or something like that, and having a really professional conversation. I am a huge learner in human design. I have a one line, which is like the investigator and the researcher. And I love to learn about topics that I don't really know a lot about. And one of the questions, I guess we could start here, is I think sex toys can be very overwhelming and people just kind of stay away from them, maybe especially men, but I would love to hear your opinion on women too, because we don't really know a lot about them, and sex is one of the most vulnerable things that we do, right? So, like, to be in a relationship and have someone be like, hey, do you want to use this cock ring? And you're like, I have no idea how to use it. And we just say no because we don't want to feel vulnerable. So that would be my first question is, I guess first question, do you find that it's more men that are less interested in sex toys than women, or is it a 50-50 split? And if you're able to have a conversation with them, is that the reason? Is just kind of the lack of knowledge, or are there other reasons that people kind of shy away from this?
It really seems to be that it could be men or women, honestly, that are have that lack of interest because
Mm,
in part, it depends upon how open people are to trying new things. And
okay.
sometimes I think a big resistance for a lot of people is just like you said, like that lack of knowledge. So sometimes there's this worry about like, where do we even start? Or maybe there's like an embarrassment factor with like, where do we even get them? And, going into a store, like a sex store, for somebody that's never been, can be overwhelming. It can
Yeah.
definitely make you blush. And then you see walls and walls and walls of all these products, a lot of what you may not know what to do with.
Right.
And it can just like be that barrier for a lot of people. So I really think it can be, either men or women. But I think there's a huge part of it is not truly understanding the utility of them. And so what's amazing about sex toys is not only can they enhance things like pleasure and orgasm, not only have they been some of them been shown to improve erectile dysfunction, improve things like pelvic pain and vaginal dryness. So you can see like in what I'm listing, it's like it's not just like the pleasure component of things,
Yeah.
but there's also this ability to deeply heal. And like in some sex toys, for example, have been researched for women to reduce pelvic pain, like majorly after just like 12 weeks use, like a 5 times reduction in pelvic pain in just
Wow.
12 weeks. Same
Hmm.
thing with like erectile dysfunction. We have like, this is such a common problem in men, and there's so much stigma around this, but yet we see that certain sex toys can really help with that as well.
Hmm.
So I think we need to like start understanding that like not only are these things helpful and they can help with pleasure, but they can and novelty and all that, but we can also solve a lot of medical problems.
Wow.
And so I think the more we start to realize, like, oh, this is just a tool, no different than saying, hey, I'm gonna get a new garlic press for me in the kitchen so I can like chop up garlic better,
Yeah.
right? So it's like just another toy that we get to have in our toolbox.
Mm.
And I think just the way we look at it and the inability, I think, of a lot of people to find good information and to take those first steps and to know where to even start,
Mm.
oftentimes is what like puts that that block and that barrier down
Mm.
from moving forward.
Mm. Yeah, and that's a good point. And I do want to touch on some myths about sex toys. And you just you just reminded me of when I was younger having this kind of notion in my head that something's wrong with me if I need to use a sex toy. And like I orgasm really well using a sex toy. And there was a lot in my first serious relationship, there was a lot of barriers that I had in my mind around like, no, that's just not what you do. And I was baptized Catholic, like raised in the church. So there's
Yes, me too.
probably a lot with religion there too. But like there was so much there of like, no, like something must be wrong with me if I need, not that I need it, but if I want it and if I desire using a sex toy. So what are some of the most common myths that you get with sex toys?
Well, I'm glad you brought up your own personal story because that's absolutely one, right? I think we have this myth in general around heterosexual sex that penis vagina sex is like the superior way, and is like if we are not having like the most profound orgasms from that, there's something wrong with us.
Yeah.
And so I think that's like myth number one is really like there's many different ways to experience pleasure and orgasm, and it's really in research estimated that only 18 to 30% of women can actually orgasm from penetrative sex. So when we're talking about things like, like
Oh.
what you brought up, it's really, really common for women that using a vibrator will help her have orgasms.
Mm.
And I think that vibrators can be a great tool for teaching too. Like when we learn, oh, maybe this type of stimulation, we can combine it with partner play. That can really help. And so we got to get rid of the myth around like there's something wrong with us if we need
Yeah.
to be stimulated in XYZ, right? So that's myth number one. Another huge myth that was going around on the internet for years was that we can become addicted to our vibrators. And there's actually
Mm.
been studies on this. And what studies have shown is that when we are using kind of a higher frequency and a bigger, more of a pulse with our vibrators, like we are, then it does trigger the nerves in a certain way. And when people like use a vibrator, there might be like this almost like refractory, like reset point where the tissues need to like reacclimate. But that
Mm.
happens in like a matter of like minutes,
Hmm.
right? So yes, there is this like little window where like, oh, maybe your senses have acclimated to a little bit, but it's not like then you're like stuck like this. It's like that. It just needs a moment for that refractory period to adjust, and then the tissues are just as sensitive as always. So that's absolutely a myth that we got to get rid of. And another big one, and this is especially important, I think, for all the guys to hear, because unfortunately, I think another like stigma or belief we have in the sex world, and it's connected to that penis and vagina thing I said earlier, is that that if a man is, and this is the myth, that if a man is not able to bring a woman to full orgasm with his penis, then there's something wrong with him.
Mm-hmm.
And right. And so women can think there's something, sometimes there's something wrong with him. Men can think there's something wrong with him. Or men can think there's something wrong with her because he feels like every other woman he's made love to can have, orgasms that way. So what's wrong with her?
Yeah.
And it creates this really dysfunctional belief pattern, and none of it is true.
Mm.
So this idea that there is like a superiority of like the penis to the vagina versus other ways, kind of connected also to our myth number one, is just another thing we really need to break down and help people start to realize that while that is an amazing connection for heterosexual couples to have penis and vagina sex, and there's amazing other connection and heart, and it can still be yummy and still be part of it, but it really is not like the only way. And if she needs like help from manual stimulation, from vibrators, from these sorts of things, there's nothing wrong with you. It doesn't mean you're not providing anything. There's literally nothing wrong with the man. There's nothing wrong with the woman, and it's anatomy. Like we also see that for women, the distance from the clitoris to the opening of the vagina, how big that distance is directly related to her ability to orgasm with penetrative sex. So if it's real close, that clitoral head to the vaginal opening, it's really easy for her to have orgasms typically from penetrative sex. But if it's a bigger distance, then it becomes a lot more difficult. So, point being, this myth of like, oh, there's this one superior way to get her off is really, it's not rooted in anatomy. It's not rooted in physiology. It's not rooted in science. It's just rooted in what we've been fed by the media and the movie industry.
Yeah, that's a really hard one. So my follow-up question would be, can we teach? Can we like learn how to orgasm with straight penetration? Or like you're saying, is it just our anatomy and probably we're gonna need some external stimulation?
Truthfully, probably there's an element of both that are true.
Mm.
Like we can learn to improve our vaginal tone, our vaginal feelings, our vaginal sensation. This is where like, understanding things like the G spot, are really
Yeah.
important, because like the G spot, which is located an inch or two inside the vagina on the belly side, on the anterior side, which is close to the belly button of the vaginal canal, the G spot actually has a lot of clitoral nerves, and
Hmm.
so largely it's a clitoral orgasm. So sometimes for women it can be important, for couples to be important, to try different positions and things that will hit the G spot more easily. Sometimes they're just not able to have them because the positions that they are in may
Okay.
not reach that. If there is a curvature of the man's penis, for example, that might need different positions versus if his penis is straight. So there
Mm.
can be definitely some things that can be learned. We also see that with pregnancy, or if there's other traumas that traumas or stress that the vaginal canal has gone through, sometimes there can be scar tissue over the G spot. So that's another reason why like vibrators can be super useful, because we actually see that they can help reduce things like scar tissue, help with blood flow to the vaginal area. So if somebody is interested in exploring it, like, okay, well, I'm not having orgasms this way, but I would like to, then that's a great way. It's a great time to bring in things like vibrators to help with helping to process through and eliminating scar tissue, bringing more blood to the canal, and those sorts of things. So I do think there is an element where yes, it can be learned, and some women also might find that it's no matter how much effort they put there, it really does work a lot better to get that exterior stimulation. And I think a
Mm.
lot of women do find that just because of the way that they are anatomically built.
Hmm. Yeah. Super interesting.
Yeah.
So going back to the kind of shame and like the mental hangups around sex toys, how do we begin to work through that? And how do we work through the even the discomfort of learning a new thing, especially maybe if we're in a I guess, well, maybe not, especially if we're in a relationship. I mean, regardless, we have to practice these things with other people, and some toys are like couple toys. So how do we start working through that in maybe hopefully eventually becoming comfortable with trying sex toys or trying new positions even. It doesn't have to be a toy.
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think the first thing in having these conversations is to remember, like I talk a lot about like the how, the when, and the where of these kind of conversations. And
Sure.
it's a really great thing to start with. Like, first of all, if you've never talked about novelty, if you've never talked about changing positions or never talked about sex toys, know that 92% of people that are having like great sex report having these kind of conversations. So it is like having these kind of conversations is huge for continuing to like making sure you're not getting stuck in the rut and the
Yeah.
habits and all of that. And when you haven't had these conversations before, they can be very intimidating, like we're talking about. So I would really encourage people not to have these conversations for the first time in the bedroom or wherever your primary lovemaking spot is. And that's primarily because, think about like when we think about, oh, the way the body remembers intense things, we get images. And the last thing we want is an image of you trying to talk to your partner about sex and it doesn't go well. And now there's this kind of connection of like your bedroom with that,
Mm.
traumatic conversation. So getting it out of the bedroom. And once people are skilled at this, the bedroom turns out to be sometimes a great place to have the conversation, but that's like a more advanced skill.
Mm.
So that's kind of the where. The when is I love to give people like a heads up and not like the honey, we got to talk kind of heads up, because that will raise red flags and put alarm bells on, as I think people know. But the conversation can be as simple as like, wow, I listened to this really interesting podcast today on sex, and it just like brought up some fun things that I really want to talk to you about. Like, when do you think we could have that conversation? And the reason we do that oftentimes in the beginning is because we're trying to give them like a little bit of a heads up of like, so they can wrap their brain around this is coming. So it's not coming out of left field, but also letting them know what's about and framing it in a positive. So they go into the conversation with like, okay, this is going to be an interesting conversation. And maybe they're a little on guard, but it's already been framed to them very positively. So typically that leads to curiosity.
Mm.
And then I would actually, before people even bring up not like new positions or sex toys, I would actually first start with several weeks of just starting to bring into conversation like things that you love about your touch and intimate life. Anything from the bedroom to the way you hug and kiss or hold hands.
Mm.
And what you're doing with this is you're starting to make the nervous system of yourself and the other person and your partner connect. Oh, talking about sex makes me feel good.
Mm.
Talking about sex is safe. Talking about sex leaves me feeling like I'm doing things really awesomely. Right. So, like, that's where we really want to start. And the more specific you can be, the better. It's like way better to say, wow, I love the way you grab my neck and pull me into you, and the way you push your lips against mine, and you grab my hips and you pull me into even more, and I can just feel my whole body relax. It's going to
Mm.
be way better than like, babe, I love the way you kiss me. Right.
Yeah.
So we want some level of like, yes, this is what's happening. This is what's happening to our body. This is why it's so amazing. And then once we have built that up, then it's great. Like, okay, now we have our safe box. Now the person has already been built up and we've said 7, 10, 12 things we love. Now we can start to say, like, okay, honey, well, I listened to this podcast and it made me realize that there's so many different ways to experience pleasure. And there's ways like that I want to explore. Like, what we're doing is great. I just want to build on to it. And, here are some ideas. Can we talk about them? So again, it's like you can see the way I'm framing this. It's never like somebody is doing something wrong. It's always like we have this foundation and I love you so much and I love time with you and intimacy so much. I just want to add things on to see if we can add another cool layer that will also just support, our love and our relationship.
That feels so approachable, and thank you for saying that because as I asked that question, my next question was going to be, what if we're having this conversation with our partner and they are not very receptive? I've definitely been in situations where I'm like, listen to this podcast, or like, let's listen to this podcast together. And it's coming from this, for me, this place of curiosity and wanting to explore, but not everyone is as exploratory as me. And that feels very approachable to even just start letting your partner know what you really love and how you love it and what they're doing right. And I love that you brought in the nervous system because it's not to kind of butter them up and then get this conversation. It's really to create that co-regulation of nervous system safety to then move into the conversations that, again, I mean, because I know one of the things you said was like this desire mismatch, and how do we deal with that if we are feeling very strongly that I'd love to explore and I want to try these sex toys. And I mean, if you're listening to this podcast, that probably is you. You're the one that is wanting to explore. And if someone is listening and they feel like their partner has not been very receptive in the past and that desire mismatch, like how do we kind of attack that?
It's a really important question and one that comes up a lot, honestly. It's one of the things that I do as an intro exercise for a lot of people that take my courses is helping people get back on the same page. And what I mean by this is oftentimes when it feels like, oh, my partner's not that interested, I'm super interested, like, we try to maybe talk about it. Let's say it hasn't gone well. It can lead to this, like, not only this shutting down, but it can lead to this feeling of like separation where it's like you against them almost. And we're trying to convince each
Yeah.
other, right?
Yeah.
And that's from a standpoint of like health of a relationship and love. Like when we're on separate teams, that is just not good from a standpoint of continuing in the relationship in a healthy way. So we want to solve it. And so it's really important, I find, in a supportive exercise can be asking things like, why is sex valuable to you? Why, and starting with the whys. Why is intimacy? Why is this valuable? Just as a big picture question. And what oftentimes we're looking for is, okay, we're like, well, we love this because we get to connect and we get a release and we feel good and it's stress reduction. I feel close to you and all the like sometimes it's like I feel connected to God, spirit, energy,
Mm.
universe, whatever anybody calls that. And so what we're looking for with this is when we ask like why is sex interesting? We're looking to actually find out each other's whys. And usually there's some combination of like, oh yeah, well, I also want stress relief and I also want to feel close to you and I also want to get connected to God and I also want to feel
Mm.
love. And so then when we realize we're more on the same page, then we can, start to explore and say like, well, I feel this, and I've also been, curious because I feel like without what I've been reading, if somebody's the wanter of the sex toys,
Yeah.
reading what I've been listening to is that these things can potentially help add some of that. And I'm just so interested in these things with you. And so sometimes if we can get to like the why from not even like the true sexual perspective,
Mm,
including sex, but beyond that, sometimes that is really helpful to get people back on the same page. If
love that.
people have explored all these kind of exercises and it's like, wow, we are just not in the same page and somebody's really shut down, I find that if somebody is really shut down to this, usually that's a sign of something else going on in themselves or in the relationship.
Mm,
And, not, this is, I don't say that to like shame anybody by any means. It's just a sign that this is a good time to either work with like a sex therapist or a couples therapist or somebody that can really more hand tailor like what is going on where there is this resistance.
yeah.
Because if they're not responding to this, there's probably some block that they may perhaps may not even know about. It might be subconscious
Yeah.
that having a professional support would really really help potentially get over that hump.
I love that. And we did have a sex therapist on the podcast, so I will also link that down below. Her name's
Great.
Emma. She's amazing. So absolutely, I definitely agree with everything that you said. So let's get to okay, now we're at this place where we had a conversation with our partner. They're feeling excited to explore. We're feeling excited to explore. Now what? How do we start finding sex toys? How do we start exploring? Like, do we go to a sex store? What if we're really uncomfortable with that? I've honestly, the majority of my experience with sex toys is just using like Amazon or like what's that one, like Adam and Eve or something, where it just feels like there's very generic. They're all kind of like five of the same toys in different varieties. So yeah, where do we start? Where's your favorite place?
Yeah, it's a really great question. And I think one of the first things to say with this is like, okay, where do we start online? Do we start
Yeah.
with with a store? And it sort of depends. Like I find that if people are like, really kind of over that hump around like, oh, they're like excited and they're not like, worried about the embarrassment. Like going to a store, even if you don't buy something from a store, can be just like fun and sexy. And like to go with your partner, like can be wonderful. And any stores that I've been to, the people behind the counter are so excited to help. Like
Mm,
any experience I've ever had in a live store has always been with like people that are professional, they're like supportive, they're like very easy to talk to. So I've never had a situation where anybody is like ever made anything like embarrassing or anything like
yeah.
that. So if there is that level of comfort, I think that's a fun, just it can be like a fun hot date.
Yeah.
But if that feels like a little bit much, one, I definitely would recommend people do go to my website because I do have all of my favorite toys on there. And so
Mm,
anything that I have vetted there, because there's some things that we have to remember about toys that just kind of are across the board rules. So one is we want to make sure that we are really working with toys that are really good grade silicone or
mm,
glass. And there's
okay.
toys on the market that are plastic and made of like a plastic combination of things. This is really problematic because those plastics, when we're using them either on the vulva, the penis, or internally in the vagina, they can actually absorb through the skin. And a lot of the chemicals in the plastic are endocrine disruptors, meaning they disrupt our hormones. So
Oh,
now we're using these things on our sex organs, and like our sex
mm,
organs need hormones to work properly. And now we're putting something in that can be really harmful. So that's like one reason why it's like quality definitely matters. So that's just kind of one rule across the board. You want silicone or glass. Glass kind of is nice because glass, you can heat it up, you can cool it down. It's
mm.
dishwasher safe. So really hygienic.
Very hygienic.
Very, very hygienic. But that's kind of fun if people are interested in exploring things like temperature, is getting like a glass dildo, for example, where you can put it in the microwave or you can put it in like a basin of hot water or cool
Mm,
water and change the temperature. Another big thing to just talk about, just a kind of a general rule, and then I'll answer your question more specifically on where,
Mm.
that people need to consider is lubricants. Usually with vibrators, you are going to want a lubricant, and a lot of lubes types can break down silicone vibrators. So while you want a silicone vibrator and silicone toys, what you want is a water-based lube for your toys. Because if it's an oil-based lube it's an oil-based lube or a silicone-based lube. So silicone on silicone is bad. So
Mm.
oil-based or silicone lubes can actually break down the silicone toys. So you really want a good water-based lube. You want a lube without any preservatives in them, because the preservatives, like, they will all have like a little bit of preservatives because water can grow bacteria, but a lot of the preservatives they're using are harmful. So you
Mm.
want like your more natural kind of preservatives. You want things that are pH balanced so you don't hurt the vaginal microbiome. So that's why I'm throwing all this out, and like I don't expect people to remember all this, but this is like why I have my webpage around like these are the things I vetted. It's because of stuff like this,
Love
because
that.
you can actually cause harm if you're doing the wrong product. So just going to Amazon and be like, okay, well, she said water based. This is water based. We're good. It smells
Yeah.
like cherries. Wonderful. We want to avoid that kind of thing because we could actually be doing harm.
Wow. Thank you. Yeah, super important.
Yes. So halfhotsex.com is my webpage. Now, a good starting thing, if people are like really intimidated about where to start, a good starting toy is called a bullet. A bullet looks about like the size of my pinky or just the size of a finger, and it vibrates, and it's real, real, real small. And the reason that sometimes this is just approachable is like, oh, like you're not going to do much like internally with a bullet. It's an external toy. You can like, just insert it a little bit intravaginally, but it's so small that you're not going to insert it far. It's really much more used on the outer clitoris and on
Mm.
the vulva. But this can be a nice toy because it can go with partner play. It's just like it's so small and, attainable. So
Mm.
that's like good to know about. And then I would start asking questions like, what are your goals? Are you looking to wake up your vagina in new ways? Are you looking to heal pelvic pain? Are you looking for something
Mm.
with partner play? Are you looking for something that's going to enhance orgasms? And depending upon what your goals are, there can be different toys. So I know we talked on our last one about the Luxus, like you mentioned. I know you have
Mhm.
your toy, so I'll show it again real fast. So if you're interested in partner play, the Luxus is absolutely my favorite toy on the market. And I love it because one of the things that works so well with partner play is when we're doing things like we talked about earlier in this show around helping the clitoris get involved, but also being able to play with penetrative sex.
Yeah.
Right. And so doing something and having a toy where we still really get that male female connection like that, and also get the clitoral stimulation is just wonderful. So this is the female part and has like harness for one leg, for one thigh, harness for another thigh. And then this part sits really nicely over the clitoris.
Hmm.
And so with the harness, it stays in place so that as you're trying different positions, it's there on your clitoris. And then the male part has this silicone based cock ring. It slides on and off real easily, and it has a magnet. And as the magnet goes closer to this part, it will actually vibrate this part more. And so the faster the cock is moving towards the clitoris, and the harder it's moving, the more she gets stimulation. So I just think it's like such a genius product because it has the ability for him to still control her clitoral pleasure, right? So he still has an ability to do
Yeah.
that. So that's my favorite one for sure for partner play.
Mm. I like it a lot, actually. I was really excited to try it, and I love the idea of actually the vibration being controlled by the man, because it's you're not really knowing what's coming versus a vibrator has. I mean, they obviously have different settings where you could do different pulse settings, but it's pretty repetitive. So that was really fun to experience. And then also, I think that you can set it up that like it's like stronger or faster or both, depending on like again where that magnet is coming in. And I didn't know this actually from when I was doing the research on the toy, but they have a whole app that you can connect it to that actually you can have your partner like play with the different vibrations. So you could almost use it as a solo pleasure toy too, but still with your partner if you don't want to do the penetrative sex or if you want to switch it up. I mean, you could do both, right? But to have it like they can actually use their finger and like make it move faster and stronger and make it move down or shut off and then start again. And I thought that was really fun too. It is a really versatile toy, I feel like, in a lot of different ways.
I'm glad you brought up the app because that was something I definitely wanted to mention as well. The Feel
Yeah.
Connect app is just amazing because another
Yeah.
thing you can do with it is if you're wearing it and he's in another room, he can actually still control. So there's like this like ability. The cool thing about this app is there's this ability to then play from a distance.
Yeah.
So
Hmm.
let's say like, one of you is traveling.
Hmm.
You still have the ability to actually play together. So it
Yeah.
gives it's like this whole other level of ability to connect
Yeah.
using the application as well. So
Yeah.
it's a very cool toy for that.
Yeah. And I do like the harnesses. I was a little worried. I'm like, I don't know how this is going to sit on. And I didn't even use, they do, at least they sent me like an adhesive that you can put if you
They-
are hairless.
Correct.
But I was like, I want to try it without it just to see how well it sits in place with the harness straps, the leg straps. And honestly, it was fine. Like I
Yeah.
wouldn't, I mean, maybe I'll try the adhesives, but it does sit pretty well. You're right.
Yeah, I've had I have the adhesive as well.
Hmm.
It comes with all of it, and I haven't used it. All I use is just the harness, just because I love it. I get great results with it.
Yeah, yeah, it sits like yeah.
It does.
And like as the body, right? As your partner's body comes in, it also is another form of kind of shifting a little bit because I mean it's not going to like stay in place like you're like a sticker. So to just
Yes,
have that variety of like it kind of pulling off your body a little and then pushing closer into your body, that's really fun too.
I agree. I agree. And like what you said around like, oh, like the unknown of when your partner is gonna,
Hmm.
enter, and there's a level where it's like it builds like that anticipation where it's like, oh, a lot of stimulation, and then like he moves and it goes away. And it's like it can create that kind of like desire for like, when is it
Yeah.
coming back? I
Yeah.
want that. So it's a really fun toy, I think, for just kind of building the arc of the orgasm
Yeah.
too, because like the more we can get stimulated and pull back, and the more we can get stimulated and pull back, typically that is related to having better and more profound and longer lasting orgasms. Is kind of getting into that like, I'm like getting more stimulated and then it goes away. And the more we can kind of build and go back, oftentimes the better the orgasm. And it's a great tool for that as well.
That's a good point. I didn't know that. That's curious, but I mean it makes sense in my experience, but I didn't. Yeah, I've never heard someone explain it that way, so I like that too. Because a lot of times, I mean, I've definitely been with people that are like hurry up and finish kind of you both, on both ends, like wanting me to finish quickly and wanting to finish themselves quick or get them to finish quickly and having that again like I that's what I think I like about couples toys specifically is it's this let's make it more of this whole experience rather than shove it in real quick and let's be done.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And I think, I think it's so easy when we get in the experience, even if we're like, oh, we have so much time to be here. It's so easy when that excitement builds to be like, okay, like I'm ready for the grand finale, right?
Yeah.
But it not only like does like getting to that like seven, like if like 9 or 10 on the scale of arousals when we orgasm, like getting into that 7 or 8 where it's like we get you when you get really close, and then pulling back, it's a practice for
Mm,
sure.
mm,
But it does require, I think, a level of like commitment around like I'm going to do this. And I have
yeah.
seen that it can be a good practice to actually like explore that in solo play, to just
Yeah.
get used to like, okay, well, how do I like get real close and then kind of like clamp it down and bring it down?
Hmm.
Just because if people are wanting to have like increase what I call the orgasmic capacity, which is just basically the ability to experience more profound orgasms.
Mm,
Part of this is one of the huge skills that I find to be necessary in order to expand the pleasure capacity.
yeah, I like that. So what are the other toys or even we don't have to get into like specific toys unless you have other ones that you love, but even just ideas of, because even like this is a whole new idea that we're exploring of kind of creating that tension. And again, like we don't know what we don't know. And I don't feel like I've ever heard anyone even talking about this unless you're maybe going on like a kink website or something. And then sometimes it feels a little bit overwhelming. So, what else is there that you're like, this would be a good one to explore?
Yeah, I have a few more show and tell things for sure here.
Sure.
And the one I want to show is the mystery vibe. This is the crescendo too. This is a really cool tool, and what I love about this company is because they have their devices as FDA approved for HSA because they're medical
Ah,
devices because they do so much research on what these devices can actually heal. And this is one of their devices that have actually has been shown in research for reduction of pelvic pain.
wow.
But what I love about this is because like at each of these little joints, right, it moves like this. And every single one of these joints is a separate like control from a vibratory standpoint.
Wow.
So not only, so sometimes it's like, wow, that's a lot. But what it allows is it allows for like, oh, if this part of the vagina is a little more numb, that part's a little more sensitive, that sort of thing. It allows you to fine tune what actually is feeling good and what actually works for you. And because it's, shapes like this, think about the ways that you can use this and like bend it to say, wake up parts of the vagina and bring more blood flow back and be like, wow, what does it feel if I like stimulate over here? And what does that do for pleasure? Right. So it allows for a lot of play that way for you to learn your own, as a woman, for you to learn your own body and to
Mm,
heal your body, to experience massive pleasure, but then also to teach your partner. This company also has a great partner device called the Tenuto 2. The Tenuto it's kind of like a glorified, cock ring in some ways. The penis does go through it like a cock ring, but it has this extension where it actually sits on the vulva. So it's another device that you can use for partner play. And that's been shown the Tenuto has been shown to help with erections for him. So it can help blood flow stay there. And then it's also been shown to help with her orgasms because she's getting the labia, the clitoris, and the vulva all deeply stimulated.
is it vibrating?
It's vibrating. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Very cool.
Exactly. So
Huh.
that's really cool. And then I definitely need to tell you about the lioness. So the lioness it's a classic rabbit style vibrator. So this looks really similar to a lot of people have seen on sex shops. Anything with the, kind of the extra extension for clitoris here in this shape is going to be the rabbit. But what's amazing about the lioness is this is a data tracking device for our orgasms.
What?
So just like we have like our Aura rings, our Fitbits, all our like tracking devices for our steps and whatnot,
Mm,
this will actually record it as an app and you can actually see the arousal and the orgasm in real time. And
wow.
so it can be what they've seen with this in some of the research they're doing is that when, just like anything else, like when we track it, we get better at it.
Mm,
So it's improving quantity and quality of orgasms in women. So a really amazing device if women are like having trouble reaching orgasm. And it's also a fun learning tool for partners
mm-hmm.
because partners can then learn like, oh, look at like I do this. Look at like seeing in real time, you're getting aroused. So that's a really, really cool toy.
I'm just
Uh,
imagining my man like holding his phone, like, oh, this was good.
it's working.
Let me do
It's
more of this. Or like, oh my God, that was the best orgasm you've had yet.
working. Right? Yeah, it's like
That sounds
so. I mean, for
fun.
anybody that's in like like the biohacking world of this, it's a really cool way of like being like, wow, how do I like maximize my pleasure?
Love
Well,
that.
track it. You
Love
track
that.
it.
That's really fun. Absolutely.
Really fun.
Yeah.
And then I got to show this too. So this is like a device a little more than a toy in many ways, but it can work also like a toy a little bit. So these are penis pumps. And
Okay.
so what these I have the smallest and the largest here, and then there's some in between size. And so this will sit on top of the penis.
Mm.
And then there's a device that goes up here that measures like pressure and that sort of thing. And it's actually putting blood into the penis. It
Wow.
has been shown to not only improve erectile dysfunctions, but it's been shown with regular use to increase length by a full inch and girth by about a half an inch. And
Wow.
so what can help too, and this is why it's important for people to understand. So like if a man is having a hard time getting hard, or if he's like noticing that, hey, he's fine with solo play, but the time partner play comes along, it's a challenge, then this also comes with a cock ring. So you can stick the cock ring around it, stick this on the penis, pump up the penis, and then like put the cock ring down around the penis
Ah.
after you've pumped. And what that does is it'll keep blood in the penis. So
Hmm.
you could even combine it, like it comes with a cock ring, but you could even combine it with something this, like from the Luxus. And
Yeah.
then what you're doing is then you're keeping that blood flow here
Wow.
in the penis, and therefore if like that's leading to performance anxiety or not having sex for that reason, that's a really good, tool as well.
Yeah, I love that because it is. I know that it can be really tough, and then it does lead to a lot of mental anxiety of like, oh, what if we have sex this time and I don't get hard? And, there's so much there that's a really cool tool. I've never actually heard of that.
Yeah, it's a vicious cycle you bring up, right? Because I think
Yeah.
what happens is like sometimes it's just as simple as like all that happens is one time and he's maybe a
Yeah.
little stressed and work's been really hard and his mind's busy and it just happens not to work. And
Mm.
then if they don't talk about it, then what tends to happen for her is like, gosh, like, and does he not think I'm pretty anymore?
Yeah.
Did I do something wrong? Is he not attracted to me anymore? And so then she can start retracting. And then if he tries again and gets brave to try it again, but now he's coming into it with like anxiety a little bit around like, what happens if it doesn't work now? And that's
Mm.
another reason why I think even like talking about sex toys is so important because when we're talking about and sex in general, because the more we just normalize this to say, oh, if there is a level of erectile dysfunction, okay, that just means there's an imbalance in the body. Let's figure
Mm.
that out. But there's so many different ways we can still enjoy pleasure and play. So,
Yeah.
what can we still do as a couple to enjoy pleasure, to enjoy closeness, to still have this time together
Mm.
while we're at the same time, working to figure this out and just make it just like not a big deal, like solving
Mm.
anything else, like, oh, somebody has, joint pain and we got to solve
Mhm.
that. Right. And just
Mhm.
make it something like, okay, we're going to work together to get to the right information and figure out the why. And in the meantime, we're going to enjoy pleasure in all these other ways that keep
Mm.
us close and still helps each other feel like we're deeply providing this for each other.
Yeah, you make it sound so easy. And so I love all of these invitations because it is, I mean, that's why I want to have these conversations. I love, you said this earlier, but I love talking about things that we don't talk about often because when we don't talk about it, there is just this innate level of shame or guilt or judgment. And sometimes it's lack of knowledge. Sometimes it's feeling shameful that this is something that we shouldn't talk about. Like, we shouldn't talk about sex, which is so much conditioning. But if we're not talking about it, then again, in this example, I imagine that a lot of people are just not having sex then because, or not even experiencing any pleasure or having any intimacy or very little intimacy because there's that fear of, oh, well, if I caress my woman, maybe she's going to want to have sex and then I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to get erect. And then, and there's like this whole mental journey that we go down and then it's not even happening. And it is like, I love it. It's not a big deal. We just have to figure out how to solve it and see where the imbalance is and maybe try, thank you for introducing that toy because I think that would be really fun to explore.
Yeah, it's, when you say this about like, oh my gosh, I caressed my woman and now she's going to want sex and like now I'm going to shut down. It's like, it's such a good example, Hannah, because
Mm.
like another thing that I find can happen too is like the opposite side of things. If she's the one with some sort of imbalance in her body and she's the one not interested in it, and then he approaches her, she can like start to feel like, oh gosh, like he touched me. Now he definitely wants sex. So I'm
Yeah.
gonna push him away versus like grab him in for the embrace because I don't want to give him the wrong impression if I'm
Yeah.
not available for that. Right.
Mm.
And all these like subtle cues, and it's like the Gottmans at the Gottman Institute that teach on relationships, they talk about this concept of like bidding and how many times can we actually, when we like bid, meaning like, say like make ourselves available for love or for a response from our partner and
Mm.
they turn away. And they talk about like that what they've seen in their studies around like and there's an exact number, I don't remember from their teaching what it is, but the more of that pushing away when there's these small bids, there's a direct relationship they found in their research to divorce.
Yeah.
Right. And so with that, it's like all these tiny little things around like somebody reaching out for a hug or love. It's like, okay, well, we try to, push them away because of all these other hidden agendas. But what we're actually doing is we're saying no to a bid. And the more we do that, the more we're on our way to the relationship not being in a good place.
Mm.
And you're right. Like when you're saying like, oh, I make it sound so easy. I do want to actually address that because I do. There's a song from I'm trying to remember what song it is, but the Indigo Girls, which I was very into in high school, they have a song. And one of the lines is the hardest things in life are the least complicated.
Yeah.
And so, it's like when I talk about this, like it sounds easy because really it's like not complicated.
Yeah.
It's like these are, it's like a simple in many ways to understand formula, but then we put in, feelings and ego and stress and kids and all the things. And, in the simplest things, it's like I think it's an important thing to mention here since you did bring this up, which I appreciate, is that when we're learning this, it's a new skill. We're learning how to talk about this, and especially when we've been told by society that we don't talk about that. So I think it's another time to really, radical forgiveness and compassion for oneself and for one's partner, and even, naming if you're like willing to have a conversation about sex, even naming in the front around like, okay, well, this is going to be scary and this we might mess this up, and like how are we going to take care of each other if we mess this up? What are our
Mm.
commitments to forgive? What are our commitments to letting go and compassion so that we can get past this, because
Mhm.
we're probably going to mess it up along the
Mhm.
way.
Mhm. And having like I know my experience and all I can share really is my experience, but again, coming as someone that was very closed off. Like I remember the first sex toy I tried was my boyfriend bought it basically without asking me because he had asked me like, "Do you want to try sex toys?" And I was like, "No, no, no." And then he just bought it and then eventually I tried it and I'm like, "Oh my gosh, this is amazing." Like I absolutely loved it and I'm thankful for that introduction of him. But since then, as I've increased my conversation and my comfortability, just like it is a new skill. Like people will look at me and be like, "You are so comfortable talking on podcasts." I'm like, "Yeah, that's because I've been doing it for a while. Like I didn't start this yesterday and I've built that muscle." Talking about sex is the same thing and talking about it with your partner or with your friend. Like, where do you feel the most safe that you can talk about it? Maybe it's just listening to this podcast and slowly breaking down those barriers. And then trying, like, one idea that I had that you were just saying was trying a new thing with your partner where it's new for both of you. Because I know I'm kind of coming back to like that beginner mindset when I started this journey. And I didn't want to try a toy that my partner had maybe experienced already because then there's so much like, well, what if the other person was better at it or he knows more than me and I'm a little competitive. So I don't want people to know more than me and like be vulnerable. So when I was able to try the Luxus, obviously my partner hadn't tried it either. And it was this like conversation, like how do you put your legs in and how does this sit? And like trying to get the fucking like vibrator to turn on and like trying to get the cock ring on. And it was comfortable because we were both exploring it together and we were able to have that conversation around it and kind of taking it like even if you have to say this out loud to your partner of like let's just explore this and it's probably not going to be the most mind-blowing experience that we have with this new toy because we haven't tried it yet and we have to like I like sat there and like read the manual for like 10 minutes before we started, but you have to do that. I didn't know what to do. And like I know a past version of myself would have got so stuck in my head of like this is so not sexy reading a manual, but it's just kind of bringing that to light. Even that's why I'm sharing it because that's how the experience is going to go. Like we have to learn, we have to go through the trial and error, and that in itself can be still really fun.
It's a really important point you bring up, and I have seen similar in my own relationships where it's like, oh, I'll forget to like read the manual, like, oh, I want to try this, and then it's like time to do it, and it's like, oh, how do I turn it on? And and so my partner and I now, like anytime we bring a new toy in, like we go into it more like with what you're saying, where it's like,
Yeah.
okay, like if we're like just ready to like get in sexy time and we're just ready to be in it, we don't bring the new toy out in that moment, right?
Right.
And it's like we go into it with like, okay, this is exploratory. We're not jumping in. We have the time, and we're gonna first just figure out like how to even begin to use it.
Yeah.
Or I do it, it's sometimes if it's a certain type of toy, I will look at it on my own and then I'll
Yeah.
just give him like the tutorial later. Any of that is like fine to do, but I do think it's a really important thing to know around like there's a learning curve with some of these things. And
Yeah.
it's not like steep learning curve,
Right.
but it's still learning the buttons, learning what they do, learning how to put the harness on and all the things. And to just like jump into bed and being like, oh, it's going to go 0 to 100 in sexiness in 2.2 seconds
Right.
is not realistic when we're learning something new. So it's just important to
Right.
prepare for. Yeah.
Yeah. And that can still be fun. I mean,
It
it doesn't,
can.
yeah,
It
doesn't have to
can.
be.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it can still be fun. It can be still be sexy. You can still sit around in your lingerie, drink tea,
Yeah.
drink wine, laugh. Like,
Yeah.
it's there's still a lot of opportunity for connection there. It's just good
Yeah.
to know what you're getting into.
Yeah. So, what else? Is there anything else that we've missed or anything else preparing for this podcast that you're like, oh, definitely don't want to leave this out?
See, we covered lube, we've covered safety, we've covered myths, we've covered toys, conversation. I think we've done a pretty good job of really covering it all. I
Yeah.
think, the biggest thing is just, take into account this whole thing, like talk to your partner about it.
Yeah.
Start there. And if you want to try any of this, like definitely go over to my website at havehotsex.com because there's discounts on almost everything I mentioned today on that website as well.
And I like that you also have kind of some explanations, like especially of the Luxus. I know you have a whole video actually linked right there, which again, I like to research. So having someone say it rather than read it is just so much more absorbable for me. So yeah, I appreciate all of the work that you put in making that website
My
and
pleasure.
listing all the tools because it's a really well made and professional. Again, like this doesn't have to be, scrolling on your phone in the dark, like
Right.
feeling bad. Like even if you just go educate, you learn a lot.
Exactly. And my goal is to prevent people from wasting money. I've
Yeah.
had like tried lubes where it's like, wow, this is like the stickiest, grossest thing ever. Why would
Yeah.
I want to put this on me? Right. And
Yeah.
so that's why I like to vet things for people. And it's a fun job, from that standpoint.
Yeah.
And I don't want anybody else to buy like sticky, gross lube.
Oh,
So
I did. Actually, I'm gonna go to your website because I have, and I'm like, I think I used it one time. I'm like, I don't, never again. It's
yeah,
disgusting.
so gross.
So, and I didn't know the thing about the silicone and the oil base. So that's really helpful to know too.
Yeah, really, really important. And like I keep water-based, silicone-based, and oil-based lubes around for
Yeah.
different purposes,
Yeah.
right? But for toys, if they're silicone-based, we really do need those water-based. But it's like changing the lube up can change the sensation. And
Mhm.
silicones are so deliciously slippery. They're so
Yeah.
fun. But
Um,
they don't work with those silicone toys. So
yeah.
it's good to have different ones for different things.
Love it.
Yeah.
So where we have your website, where can people stay connected with you if they have questions, if they want to reach out for a clarification, where can people connect with you?
Yeah, and the easiest thing, so same thing. If you go to havehotsex.com where you see the products, you will also see freebies, a bunch of free resources for people. So in there you'll find like my lube guide, for example. I have a free
Hmm.
resource on that where you can get information on use this lube for that, use that lube for that. So, really fun educational tools. And the easiest way is just to download one of those free resources. That way, if you have any questions, if you want to reach out, you're on my mailing list. Once you get the email, then you'll know how to email me directly.
Awesome. Thank
Yeah.
you so much for coming on the podcast and thank you for all of your wisdom. And I learned so much. So I really appreciate your time and the conversation. Really important to have.
Thank you so much, too. And thanks for trying the Lexus and for being a testimonial for that. I'm
Ah,
so glad you're loving it as much as I do.
I did. Thank you.